Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Hello and welcome to Strategic Frontlines, the YouTube channel of Center for Land Warfare Studies. Today, we are going to discuss something which is not being discussed elsewhere in the world. Today, the focus is on South America. The Prime Minister has reached Argentina and before he goes for the BRICS Summit, which is a big event at the global level. But we will discuss closer home, something in South Asia, what has been brewing for the past few a few weeks, I would say, the humanitarian corridor, which has been announced by the United Nations of America in Bangladesh. And to discuss this, we have with us Lieutenant General PC Nair, former DG Assam Rifle, a prolific speaker, writer, and of course, we have our uh, own Maj Gen AK Chaturvedi, who has been very active on all forums, whether it is Tribe or whether it is the Center for Land Warfare Studies Clause. He's a distinguished fellow of Clause as well as vice chairman of now working chairman of Strive. Welcome to both of you to this forum, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And so, as we discuss, as I mentioned, today we're going to discuss something about the humanitarian corridor because it has far-reaching implications. Implications in terms of security and sovereignty of Bangladesh and its fallout on India, as well as what is going to happen in Myanmar, and will Myanmar become the next great game being played between the two major powers, which is China and United States of America? The US probably will have a greater say through the NGOs and through the humanitarian aid corridor, essentially to counter China. And the Chinese, as such, have a historical linkages with Bangladesh, and they also conducted an exercise very recently. So we are likely to see a power game which might emerge in this area. And as they say, when two big cats are fighting, the smaller ones also get involved into it. So we will have Myanmar, India, and Bangladesh, all three getting affected. There are many other issues which are of relevance to us. It has been seen in the past that humanitarian corridors have been used for terror funding, they have been used for arms smuggling, and the biggest thing, it is the golden triangle of drug drug market of the world. It is currently the largest producer of opium and related stuff, which is going all over the world, and this would be a major concern for us. So, with this small little brief, I'll open the discussion today by asking General Nair. I will show you the map also so that you can refer to the problems which we are likely to face as a region and also as a country as far as India is concerned. So over to you, General Nair, for the brief update or I would say brief opening remarks on this very important issue and how Indian security forces will get affected. Indian Army in particular and Assam Rifle and the other BSF is the other force which is deployed in this particular region. Over to you, General Nair.
Thank you, sir, for having me over. And also my gratitude to you for touching on a subject on which, like you said, not much has been spoken about. This is something which is right in your face. If you are, or if you've served in the Northeast, you'll understand the ramifications of these a lot. And I shall cover that in the latter part of my opening remarks. But to begin with, at the very outset, as we all are aware, this humanitarian corridor, so-called humanitarian corridor that is being spoken about, was a fallout of the visit of the UN chief Antonio Guterres in the month of March. When he went back, he said this is required after having visited the Rohingya camps in Cox's Bazar. But the point to also note is that this is not something new. The UN has been trying this for some time. In fact, right from 2017 onwards, when the first influx of the Rohingyas happened in Bangladesh. Today, Bangladesh has anything between 1.2 to 1.3 million Rohingya refugees who are there. And of course, the situation across in Myanmar, in the state of Rakhine that we're talking of, there is a lot of fighting that's happening between the Myanmar army and the Arakan army. And as we should know, 14 out of the 17 cities in the state of Rakhine have been taken over by the Arakan army. Three cities are still left, and of those three, two are very important. One is Sitwe, from where our Kaladan multimodal project starts, the land route, and the second is the Chokfu port, which is probably as important, if not more important, for the Chinese. A word about these two. The Kaladan multimodal project itself is estimated to be costing 2,500 crores uh, worth, possibly a little more. Uh, and it has not really fructified in the manner that we wanted it to, despite the fact this was thought of in the year 2008, 2007, 2008. That's when the first time this was signed. The Chinese thought of getting into the Indian Ocean a year later. They signed certain deals with Myanmar in 2008 9, and whatever they thought of has fructified, whether it is the oil and gas pipeline, and all of them at Chokfu port, whether it is the China Myanmar Special Economic Zone, or whether it is the offshore gas and the deep sea port. All of these are worth about 10 to 12 billion, and that is the kind of money that China has invested there. So that is the strategic importance of Rakhine for India and China. So there is, in some way, a conflict of interest. Both of us, for our respective reasons, it's very important. Now, if you look from the Bangladesh perspective, these 1.2 or 1.3 million refugees who are there, uh, they have a problem there in terms of accommodating them. They worked out various plans on how to take care of them, including rehabilitating them in the Bhashanchar Islands, which actually gets flooded during the rains. So it's not going any distance. So this corridor that the UN chief wanted was essentially twofold. One is to provide humanitarian supplies into the state of Rakhine, uh, and second, gradually, in a way, send the refugees back to Rakhine. These are the two purposes. But shielded behind these two aims, one has to look further, actually dig deeper, and see in context what has happened to such corridors when they were established in other countries, whether it was Syria, Libya, Chechnya, Iraq. At no place did it fructify in the manner in which it was thought of. And more importantly, along with that, there were other activities that happened which were not in good taste. So, when this so called humanitarian corridor comes, and what is it essentially? It's essentially a land come river route that will connect from Cox's Bazar on the Bangladesh side to Myanmar, where you have the townships of Butidong and Muangdong. Those are the places where this corridor, river land corridor, will reach. So, when you talk of a corridor, while these are the extremes of the corridor, who are the stakeholders? On the Bangladesh side, of course, all the political parties and the person who is at the helm of affairs, the chief advisor, Professor Yunus. So when this idea was propagated, he readily agreed. We are ready to do this. Go ahead with this project. But then there was a huge resistance that he came across, uh, not just from the political parties, largely by the BNP, Awami League. In any case, he had sidelined by banning them. But there were also feelings of not having this being espoused by other political small parties, and also the army. The army chief made it very clear, no, on certain terms, and you're aware of the word that he used, no bloody corridor of any kind, when he was addressing
Yes.
his uh, officers. in Dhaka, he had said this very categorically. So army surely is not in this. Um, so what happens? I'm still talking about Bangladesh. I have not touched the Myanmar part. Uh, when you have a situation where it's the feelings are not coherent, the views are not coherent. Obviously, there is resistance, a great degree of resistance. It is not likely to fructify very soon. If you look at it from the Myanmar perspective, the stakeholders, of course, are the Rohingyas. Uh, but if it has to reach the Rohingyas are incidentally only in the northern part of Rakhine, not towards the southern part. Southern part, you have the Buddhists who are there, the Arakanese Buddhists who are there. So the endeavor is to reach out to these Rohingyas. But within the Rohingyas, again, uh, you have other stakeholders like the multiple militant factions of the Rohingyas itself. Chief being the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, of which the chief of that Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, Yarsa, uh, is a person of Pakistani origin. Then there are other organizations like the Rohingya Salvation Organization, the Arakan Rohingya Army, such like all of them are stakeholders, yes, but they are also they don't find or they don't curry favor either with the Myanmar army or with the Arakan army. So these are the stakeholders which are there: the Myanmar army, Arakan army, and of course the Rohingyas, the militias that I spoke of. So,
Yeah.
if it has to reach, it has to have the concurrence of those guys also, which surely is not forthcoming. But in all of this, while the front faces the UN, the back door probably is the US. It's my belief it is the US, given the fact that they tried to make inroads to St. Martin's Island, they couldn't make headway. So now they are trying to some way get in here into Rakhine. And like I said, Rakhine is the most important state both for us and for China. The main aim would be to kind of take care of the Chinese involvement and the payoffs that China is getting. But when that happens, it's going to affect our own Kaladan multimodal project also. Given the fact that when such a corridor comes, there are other things that will happen. There would be movement of drugs, weapons, insurgents, refugees, all of that. And where will it impact? And this is the last part that I want to cover, is our state of Mizoram. Though it doesn't directly border Rakhine, but it borders Chin State, and through Chin State, a major portion of the road of the Kaladan multimodal project goes. And more importantly, it is also an area which is totally under the control of Arakan Army. So that is the significance for us of this corridor. While we may not be sharing borders, geographical borders with this corridor, but it will affect us. As it is, Mizoram has close to about 30,000 odd refugees. We can think of even more refugees coming if at all there is an attempt by Bangladesh to push back the Rohingyas into Myanmar and they're not accepted by Myanmar, or where will they go? Obviously, they're going to come into Mizoram and fester a great degree of trouble, and they have a lot on their hands already. So that is how it would impact not just Mizoram, but the entire Northeast states. Influx of refugees, weapons, contrabands, all of that.
Yeah, so Jan Nair was referring to the fact that we do not have a direct border with India of this particular corridor. But as you can see in this map, it's a little small map. I have hurriedly put it together. You can see that India is separated, but India gets affected by the fact that our Mizoram state via Myanmar will get affected, because the ultimate place where it will go, this particular aid will go in the Rakhine state, which is in the marked in the red. So we will become affected by this particular humanitarian aid corridor, should this become a big power game. Because once the bigger powers start playing around in this particular area, the spillover will be all over, because everybody will get affected. Arkan army will get affected. So where will Arkan army naturally flow in? That would be Mizoram. And so therefore all the groups there will ultimately try to find place. And there is a little bit of a, how do you say, uh, ethnic similarity between Mizoram and the bordering areas of Myanmar. So having seen the fact that the humanitarian corridor will affect India, as well as Bangladesh more, India to a great extent, especially our Kaladan project. I would like to ask General Chaturvedi that there is another angle in this humanitarian corridor, and which is that, and the the general mentioned very briefly that the army is not on board on this. So the army chief, especially now, the army chief has been probably being there is an effort by Yunus to sideline the army chief Wakaruzaman through appointment of a military advisor called Lieutenant General Kamrul Hassan, and he has been trying to get Kamrul Hassan to actually appoint him as the chief of the army staff. Although, as per the current constitution, the president is the overall commander of the Bangladesh armed forces. So therefore, Wakaruzaman has been able to scuttle this particular move. But Wakaruzaman, despite opposing it, is on a weak wicket. How do you think this internal rivalry which is taking place within Bangladesh affect the humanitarian aid corridor? Will it not lead to a greater and a greater influence of the big powers in this particular region? A
Oh,
comment
yes,
by you.
yes, yes. You look at like this. You see, what has happened for, say, Bangladesh. There's a Yunus is a US asset, but at the same time, he's keeping his lines intact with China. When he went in March and he said that Northeast could be exploited, and he says we
Yes,
can be your front. So
correct.
the chicken neck's importance comes, and that is where the Kaladan projects come. So as far as India is concerned, that issue is there. Now, the General Zaman is not on the same page as Yunus, because it is they are mutually exclusive. If one remains in power, Zaman goes. So Zaman is trying to create his own lobby, and lucky for him that BNP, which is the largest party at the moment,
Yes, yes.
and Hifazat-e-Islam and other smaller parties, they are all on board with him. So Yunus had to beat a hasty retreat on this issue. But the fact remains that US is with him, because US has, as General Nair very rightly mentioned, that the US has got great. Uh, uh, you can say that they have got interest in this corridor, in the sense that it gives them a foothold in this region, and by which actually they are looking not so much for either for India or Bangladesh or Myanmar. They are looking at
Mm.
Kunming and Yunnan, because that is where they threaten China quite substantially. Their BRI gets affected. So all these things, and that pipeline, which is the lifeline of that. And with this kind of a thing, it's a threat in the underbelly of China. So Yunus is counting on his US interest in this area, and that is where the whole thing lies. So how things will pan out is one is not very sure in future. However, I think both parties are jockeying quite well. Yunus is trying to get support from US, and is trying to say assure China also on the same side that Northeast we can exploit. But at the same time, Zaman has got at the moment a good hold on the local politicians and politics. So therefore, Yunus is not on a very strong wicket on this case. And in any kind of a democratic setup, where people become especially in Bangladesh after post this 5th August, the young people have understood their strength. And so, therefore, it will not be easy. And recent decisions of Yunus and all those things, they are not on the same page as the students and Yunus. So I think this is a kind of a jockeying going on, and India will have to play its card well, because we have to say this not only Kaladan project, because Kaladan project, as I mentioned, and General Nair also had earlier said, it's very important. And in your paper, you had mentioned that
Yes.
it is a kind of a lifeline for us to our northeast. In case if situation escalates, You just look at it. If the refugee pressure becomes on Mizoram, now what will happen is that it's a Christian state. If Rohingyas get pushed into, who are all and out Islamist, there will be a major social issues there, and the entire area may get start boiling, because Chin have got the ethnic affinity with Mizos. So therefore, I think we have to be very, very carefully observe, and be nimble-footed on to react to evolving situation.
Okay, now since we are discussing the non-state actors, because those are the real problem child as far as India is concerned. Now, it's not only Mizoram. The non-state actors there in Bangladesh are also radical Islamists. And given the penchant now for the US administration to, glibly interact even with the non-state actors for their selfish ends, don't you think there could be a overflow not only in Mizoram, which is via the Chin route, but also
Manipur.
in West Bengal, should the situation become bad in Bangladesh because of the radicalization which is taking place? After all, not everybody is a radical element in Bangladesh. You would have realized that Awami League was not an unpopular party in the sense that it does have 30 to 40% people who are supportive of Awami League. It's only that they are now underplayed because of the situation which is there. It has always been said for Bangladesh that Bangladesh has never remained as Bangladesh. It is either a BNP Bangladesh or a Awami League Bangladesh. So as of now, the Awami League is hiding under the or hibernating, waiting for an opportunity to come. It may not come very soon. It may come after 5 years, 10 years, but this period of 5 to 10 years is going to be very, very difficult for India. Look, we have a very narrow northeastern corridor. Sorry, the chicken neck, which we refer to it as chicken neck. Yunus has already been giving statements to the effect that northeastern states should come together, and Bangladesh is the gateway for them, etc. Then you have the Kaladan, which is an alternate route which we were trying to develop. I always say the name Kaladan has been put incorrectly. This is my I always have this intuition. इसका नाम कलादान क्यों रखा? ये black is gone into a black magic right from the time it has been conceived. Something or the other happens for making Kaladan a no-go since the time it has been conceived. It may be just a wild, without any logic kind of a thing, but that's the way it is. If you see, since its inception, Kaladan has remained Kala, and that is something which is of concern to us. So, don't you think for India it is going to be very critical now? Radical Islamists could be pushed across towards West Bengal. From this side, you
Yes,
will have the immigration coming in, and the fact that US Yunus is closer to the US, he may be playing the double game like what is being played by Munir in the West. CPEC is blocked by China, by the US, and here also CMEC is blocked by the US. So there is a good game going on in which the local players are playing a double game. Here it is Yunus, there it is Munir. Aren't we looking at something which is dangerous for us?
absolutely.
Comment by com- comment by both of you on this issue. We'll start with Jan Nair because Jan Chaturvedi just spoke. So, Jan Nair, your views, or it is just my figment of imagination?
So it's not your figment of imagination at all. So we need to get into uh, the bottom of the presence of these Jamaat factions. And as you would understand, going back in time, when Bangladesh got its independence, Jamaat and the Pakistanis were the ones who didn't want an independent country of Bangladesh. They wanted Pakistan to remain as it were. But that didn't happen. And thereafter, on multiple occasions, Jamaat tried to raise its hydra-headed thing very often, but it used to be not as prominent as it is now. Uh, in the year 2017, that is when the actions of the Jamaat came to the front, and when Sheikh Hasina realized that there is a problem, and that is when the whole Holy Artisan Bakery attack happened
Yes.
of
Yeah.
the fundamentalists. 22 people were killed. There were a couple of Indians also killed, many other nationalities. And Sheikh Hasina came down very strongly after that. But what also came to fore was the fact that some of the um, people who are related to this attack were positioned in India along the Bangladesh border. So there were sleeper cells right here who were all part of this nexus. And between India and Bangladesh, we were able to handle that. And she went to the extreme of kind of executing everyone who was involved, who came to fore. They were just, uh, hung. But thereafter, despite the fact that she also imprisoned many of the people who were involved in
Political.
organization, uh, most of these Jamaat leaders got released the moment Yunus came to power.
Yes.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so uh, the protests and all, which were orchestrated to a very large extent, while the front face were again the youth, but the silent operatives behind them were the Jamaat, and they came to fore once Yunus came to power, once most of the radicals got released, and that is when the atrocities happened against the other uh, uh, religious followers, the Hindus, Christians, also some Shias who were attacked in very large number, and also Buddhists. Your point in whether some of these refugees may come across into India, it's quite possible, and that is what the Jamaat wanted. Initially, there were a few hundreds, a few who came in the hundreds along the Bangladesh West Bengal border, but then they kind of made a resolve, the Hindus particularly, that we will continue to stick here no matter what, and that the reason for that, I think, is the dual identity that the people of Bangladesh have: Islamic identity or the Bengali Bangla identity. uh, the creation of Bangladesh itself was a proof that it was the Bangla identity which kind of
Yeah.
overrides the Muslim identity, and it remains so. And as I have been covering in many of my talks, the uh, Durga Puja festival, which was held last October after the monsoon revolution in Bangladesh, and when Yunus came to power on 4th of August. After that, a litmus test was the Durga Puja celebration, and there were
Yes.
multiple thoughts that went around in India saying, no, it will not happen in the manner in which it is usually done. And surprisingly, it was done more or less in exactly the same manner, though the fundamentalists tried their best to stop the celebrations, but they couldn't succeed. So that, in some way, is an indication that the Bangla identity still remains. But yes, the problem of influx is there. And coming to the other part of the great game that you spoke of, yes, you're very right in saying that the two ocean strategy that China has been thinking of for far too long, getting into the Indian Ocean through the CMEC, through the CPEC, uh, the Americans are now trying multiple modes to arrest them. And while between the two, if one has to see with the happenings in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, I think CPEC, despite the fact that China has invested almost close to 30 billions of the 60 billion
Yes.
project that CPEC was supposed to be, and whereas here it is relatively lesser, but uh, the higher chances of success for China to the Indian Ocean through Kunming, of course, importance already General Chaturvedi has brought out, Kunming and Yunnan. This
Mhm.
is a relatively less developed region, and the chances for China to succeed, to my mind, are more in the CMEC rather than the CPECs.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very important statement which Jan Nair has made. So, Jan Chaturvedi, before I go to the remedies, because we keep discussing the problem, then people say, "Where are the remedies? How do we tackle this particular challenge?" I would only like you to comment on the fact that in this big power game, do you think? I mean, it's just again a wild thought which I keep coming up with. Do you think it would have been better instead of humanitarian corridor, if there was some foothold in that Saint Helena Island, rather than getting onto the mainland of Bangladesh and then going through the entire territory, so the great game has become actually much closer than what it would have been had only the island been some kind of a foothold for the US, especially from our security point of view. Brief comment on that. See, both are
Just
not good, but this is probably the worst of the two.
just look at this. Americans always wanted this Saint Marine Island. Yes. So, and for their interest was, as I mentioned, is underbelly of China. And
Yeah.
if that didn't work out, because I think Sheikh Hasina in India realized the relevance and importance of that island, so that is why they have gone for this humanitarian corridor, which finally will turn out to be their foothold into this very important strategic location that Rakhine and Bangladesh, Myanmar, both would be impacted quite substantially. And as General Nair very rightly said, that CMEC has got far greater chances of success than, and they have already, that pipeline and all is already they have established.
Yeah.
So with
Yeah.
that kind of a thing, to my mind, I think Saint Marine Island and all those things is whatever you say. Uh, this was the
Both are
fate
bad.
which would have happened.
Both are bad. So, quick comment on will the US now make an effort to create a or carve out a Christian state? This has been in the social media, so I thought let me ask your comments, especially Jan Nair, because you have been operating in that area for quite some time. Do you think it has any feasibility, or it is just a rumor mongering which has been happening in the social media?
That's a very good question, sir. But before I address that, if you permit, there are two things I wanted to touch upon. One, of
Yeah.
course, you mentioned the name Kaladan, going by the manner in which it appears to us. We should probably have stuck to the original name, which is Collodine River. So it would have probably come as Collodine. Uh,
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
and
So,
the second thing is the relevance of St. Martin's Island. It's just a 3 square kilometer island, very small. And if we look at it geographically, it is actually closer to Myanmar than it is to Bangladesh. It is
yeah.
8 kilometers from Myanmar and 9 kilometers from Bangladesh. But the International Tribunal in Den Haag in the
Mhm.
year 2000, I think 12, gave a ruling in favor of Bangladesh, because if that was not given, the exclusive economic zone of Bangladesh would have been cut down further. And Myanmar would have got a farther reach in EEZ, and the tribunal in Den Haag felt that Myanmar, as it is, has a very large EEZ as compared to Bangladesh, and because on the one side Bangladesh has India, the other side Myanmar, so the EEZ is actually in the form of a cone. They don't
Mhm.
really get the EEZ that people countries seek. So these are the 2 points I wanted to make. And coming back to your question, sir, it's very important in the sense, like Jal Chaturvedi rightly brought out, there is this huge
Yeah,
ethnic
yeah.
conflict that exists.
You could explain that EZ thing on this map. You see, it's a cone what he was referring to, and probably the geopolitics also kicked in here when they accorded the rights to Bangladesh. Maybe because of the fact that Myanmar is more under the Chinese influence as compared to Bangladesh. So
That's quite possible. That's quite possible. The
yeah.
games that people play, countries play, it's quite possible, sir. But coming back to the question that you raised in terms of the spread of Christianity, um, the ethnic convergence, as General Chaturvedi very rightly brought out, there is this Kukizo uh, and Chin ethnic commonality that transcends trans-border, and it's in Mizoram, Manipur, and of course Chin State. Not Sagaing as much, but these three regions,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
these were also. This is also the place where Christianity first appeared, somewhere in 1871, and from 1912 onwards, then they started propagating in a big way because of the push that the help that the British gave them. But it hasn't stopped at that. Uh, my during While I was still the DG Assam Rifles, I noticed there was a lot of movement of the American church people coming in. There is no reason, and this I gather in the last 6 months has increased the number of Americans coming, missionary guys coming, uh, going to meet up in the church, funding them. What is their ultimate purpose? You can leave it in the realms of speculation, but surely it's a cause for worry when a large number of Americans, all of them missionaries, all of them connected to this church, are coming here and infusing a lot of money into the churches. Uh, the aims, objectives could be many. It is anybody's guess, but probably at the national level, I'm sure people in the past are taking note of this and trying to arrest or restrain the kind of people who are coming here. But one good thing that has happened in Mizoram, so I would again like to bring to the notice of your viewers, is the fact that Aizawl Airport, the only airport that is there in Mizoram, is now with the CISF. It was a
Oh,
move
good.
that has been constantly opposed by the state of Mizoram. They wanted their police to be taking care of that airport. So, for multiple reasons, they said they kind of went back to the 1986 Mizo Peace Accord. They said, though it is not there in writing, but they said it is a understanding that it is our police who will control to have sway or power over the entire state, and they didn't want any central forces to take care of the airport. But now that this is there in place, I'm sure they'll be able to keep a watch on the kind of people who come and also arrest the amount of drug smuggling that was happening through air.
Yeah. So,
One small,
yeah,
Dushyant, I would like to add. Last year,
Hanji sir.
Chief Minister of Mizoram went to US, and on 2 days, two different statement he gave, and the statement almost the second statement was almost that he expressed his solidarity with Chins, with Kokizo.
Yeah.
And so this is something which is, and in
Yes.
between, he had a meeting with some of the American officials and all those things. So we can draw our own conclusion, but imagine the the outflow would be not only here, it will be a much larger, and it will be a threat not only to India, to Bangladesh, to Myanmar, to China, all four. And India, the Christian state, suddenly will get traction because Mizo, Kukizo, and Nagas and all those things. I mean, although ethnic divide divides them, but then who knows
Yeah, I
how
mean,
things.
you're right, sir. With increasing ISI presence now in the in Bangladesh, these kind of efforts to balkanize India, get back to that 1971 kind of a revenge, and also the fact that currently the people who are in charge of Bangladesh were possibly having their alliance to the West Pakistan formation, whether it is Kamrul Hassan. I mean, these are the speculations which are going around. We can't say for certain, but there is a dangerous situation. So, if there is a dangerous situation, I'll first like General Chaturvedi to highlight non-military actions which we need to take to make sure that this part of the world remains uh, in favorable situation as far as India is concerned, as also overall for the peace of the region, and General Nair for military level actions to ensure that the borders of India remain safe, as also the situation in the region is under our control, whether it is in the area of Bangladesh or sorry, West Bengal, or in the area of Assam, or in the areas of Mizoram. So it's a big question, but just in point form, sir. Over to General Chaturvedi, sir, for the bigger solutions and for military solutions to Jal Nair.
My sense is that two, three. Firstly, we will have to use the forum of such things like BIMSTEC because BIMSTEC and Kaladan are quite interrelated, and therefore it can give certain benefits and great benefits to Myanmar also. In case if the whole thing gets, because the kind of revenue which they will be earning if the Kaladan project becomes successful, because finally it is going to be a road also to Aizawl. So with Aizawl. So this kind of a thing, firstly, we have to get BIMSTEC into motion. Myanmar has to be on board with India quite substantially. Uh, China has their own interests, but then what I am saying is that Bangladesh we can't trust. But then Bangladesh, one thing is good. Next year, the Ganga project, this accord is coming for renewal, and that's
Okay.
a big ticket for us to have our uh, kind of a leverage with Bangladesh, because Bangladesh, 83% of their water is contaminated because of the over exploitation of their groundwater. If that be the case, Bangladesh needs surface water, and in case India does not give them as much as they want, there will be a problem. Second is power supply. So Bangladesh, India has got a lot of leverages with Bangladesh, and Bangladesh, whoever is in the government, or the permanent government, they will have to realize that they can't do without India. Even say Brahmaputra taming, which China is trying to do at Medog, unless Bangladesh and India are together, China will have their way. So that is one part of it. Second is internally, we will have to work out a system whereby this Maiti versus Kukizo versus Mizos and Kukizo alliance and Nagaland and all those, that will have to be addressed. And one of the major important reasons in this is this, which is drug trafficking. So drug trafficking can only be a good thing is Bangladesh more and more becomes say puritanical. So as it happened in Golden Crescent, certain drug trafficking definitely will change. The pattern will change. So my sense is that economic development, and once Kaladan has to be somehow to be completed, that's the most important part, because that will Myanmar and local both will be reassured.
Jan Nair, you can add to whatever Jan Chaturvedi has said, and also the military part. Let's focus a little on the military part. That how do you think we should manage the our security situation there, both by the Indian Army, Assam Rifle, and the BSF, because all three are affected in this particular region. Yes, over to you.
So, seen from the military perspective, what affects us is, of course, top of the block is insurgency. The insurgency levels have surely come down, but the potential to again spike the insurgency levels up, the tap is still in the hands of China. China can spike it up anytime that it wants. The second thing that militarily, if you look at, is the influx of weapons. Most of the illegal weapons that are sourced in the northeast, and particularly of the Chinese origin, they are all made in factories
Yunnan.
in Yunnan.
Yeah.
While they may not have the Chinese ordnance markings on them, but they have a very close resemblance. So surely there is a state complicity in those weapons moving around there. Uh, the third thing that needs to be looked at is the trans-border movement of people, and in the form or disguise of people are the militants themselves who move around. So there, our government has addressed two things. One is the free move regime, whereby along the entire Indo-Myanmar border, and just again, this is for the knowledge of the viewers, the free move regime essentially means 16 kilometers either side of the Indo-Myanmar border, all villages that exist, and there are close to 840 of them. The villagers are free to move without any passport or visa for a limited period of 14 days. But practically, how that works out is, while the upper limit is 14 days, you can really have no check. A person just comes and goes whenever he feels like, given the fact that we have not been able to arrive at a consensus in terms of what kind of border passes to have and in what form can they be carried. These don't exist. So one is the government has said, first it announced that it is doing away with free move regime, but thereafter, because of the great opposition that was faced in Nagaland, in Mizoram, in parts of Manipur, government has said there will be certain designated places from which crossings can take place. So the crossings will happen only from designated places. The second thing that the government has done is announce creation of a border fence between the two countries, essentially again to arrest the free movement. And what it is actually is not a physical fence as the one that exists between India and Bangladesh, but it's a mixture of physical and smart fencing, where you'll have cameras, radars, uh,
Surveillance, basically
or
surveillance.
surveillance part, and certain parts will be physically fenced as well. So the FMR, as we understand, would not totally go, given the fact that there will be legislated designated points from where they can come and go. And of course, if you talk of an escalation to a level where a confrontation between India and China happens, there is always this third country option, which we keep talking of, China probably coming in through Myanmar, one of the axes. And here I would again like to bring to the notice of your viewers that there's a place called Vijayanagar in Arunachal Pradesh. It's in the form of a dagger which juts into Sagaing's state of Myanmar, Kachin state of Myanmar. And this is a very important piece of real estate that we got in 1961, again by Assam Rifles. The then IG, there was no DG, then the IG himself was involved in the expedition, and we got this 850 square kilometers of land. If we hadn't got that, 1962 would have been a very different story. The Chinese would have gotten through the Vijayanagar salient and would have reached south of Brahmaputra, which meant they would have reached Guwahati and not north of Tezpur where they stopped. So that is one threat. While Vijayanagar is out, but further down you have the highway. I'm forgetting that now.
Yeah, yeah.
The name is just slipping my mind.
T. T. It starts with T.
Yes, sir.
It starts with T. I think T.
It's in Arunachal Pradesh. It is very close to.
I know. I know.
It is a little
Pangsau.
south to Pangsau Pass. Yes, Pangsau Pass.
Pangsau Pass. Pangsau Pass. Yeah. Yeah.
That is the third country option that we keep talking of. The Stillwell Road, which passes through that, which was created during the World War,
During
and
World
China
War
has been very keen on activating this Stillwell Road. It has on multiple occasions tried telling Myanmar to develop it. Myanmar has been relatively not as gung ho as the Chinese because they take into consideration our concerns also. So these are the security issues which are there, which have to be addressed, and which are being which are being addressed in any way. Coming to the other border in terms of the Bangladesh Mizoram border, uh, again, this is fenced, and the fencing started way back in 1991, but it is still not complete. There are still stretches because of various rivers that are flowing into Bangladesh. These fences cannot be made, and that is where all the migration happens, or people coming, refugees coming in from Bangladesh use those routes to come in. So surely we have to be more watchful on that front also. BSFM is doing a very good job, uh, but I'm sure there'll be processes in the pipeline to address it in a better manner.
Yeah. So basically, we will conclude the discussion here with and take some additional questions. As a summing up, I would say that militarily we need to invest a lot in surveillance and also intelligence. I think intelligence will become a major part, and surveillance, in the surveillance portion, like we have satellite surveillance in the other areas of concern to us. I think now there is a need for us to extend that cover to these places also, because we should not be surprised in the future. It should not happen that we have another security situation which is totally unexpected as far as we are concerned. So that is one major issue I think militarily we have to take care of. The other thing is that we should demand a robust mechanism to control. Yes, sir, a robust mechanism to control the humanitarian aid. It should not be free for all kind of a thing. There should be safeguard uh, uh, created for humanitarian aid so that it is not misused. Then binding agreements prohibiting military or intelligence activity. I don't know how far this will be effective as far as humanitarian corridor is concerned. NGO involvement has to be very, very closely monitored, especially because of the question which I asked and all of you responded, that there is a lot of missionaries which are actually operating in these areas. There has to be a national debate over military and civil discordant note which is happening in Bangladesh. It will only create problems for us. The core principle, I think, is humanitarian corridor must remain channels for compassion and not vehicle for geopolitical interference. So, hopefully, the UN will step in and not it is being driven from behind. Hopefully, I just added that word. So we'll take few questions. And before that, Jan Chaturvedi wanted to give some comments. Sir, over to you, sir. You can.
Just
Uh,
to China's involvement in Bangladesh has to be taken note of, because they have been given Tista cleaning, which was earlier the surface, I mean, say, bottom of Tista to be addressed. Now it has gone to China, so which is very close to Indian border. Second is Lal Munir Hat is coming to under their influence. So with this kind, which
yeah.
is very close to Indian border, so we will have to increase our surveillance to that extent.
Definitely. So what we will do, sir, we will quickly take question one by one, irrespective of whose expertise, sir. We will now start with Jan Nair, and if it is no answer, then he'll continue to wait for the next question. First one is Joy Bangla says World War Three, and possibly he's trying to exclaim, why this World War Three we are talking about. I think World War Three is referred more to. There is another question in the question chat box which it will explain that. This question for you, Jan Nair, what is the point of having an army? We only talk about problems. This is exactly what I was trying to tell you all, that we need to give solutions to the problems, and this is reflecting in the question. I fully agree with Kiran Chand, and we are doing a lot. We will possibly cover certain things we don't cover because of security situation, because of classification issues, but mostly the border forces, whether the border guarding forces and the army, are active in these areas. We only try to highlight certain areas which are of a problem, so that everybody is aware what is coming in front of them. If you want to add anything to this, you can add, General Nair.
No, so I'm perfectly in agreement with what you say. Our job is to highlight the problems.
Yeah.
And when we do that, it is not to say that we are shying away from this problem. Surely we are addressing them. But it is just for public consumption that these are the problems. Yes. And we are addressing. We fully assured that the Indian Army, Navy, Air Force by extension, are taking care of all of this.
Problem solution,
Next
first
question.
step is knowing the problem itself. If you don't know
Yeah.
the problem, how will you solve? So therefore, if
Yeah.
we
Absolutely, sir. I agree with you, sir. Yogesh Bhadresha, thank you very much for your encouragement and support. Then we have Silpa Murdeshwar, Dangerous Time. Fully agree with you. This question to you, Jan Chaturvedi. Learned generals, the World War III is on rare earth. Next one looks like will be about water and your views, because this, in any case, I had referred to you. It comes to you automatically because of your expertise also. Yeah, over to
no,
you, sir.
I fully, India and Bangladesh, there are 54 rivers which from India to Bangladesh they go. So
Yeah.
therefore, the water is going to be a very major issue between India, Bangladesh, not only India, Bangladesh. Here, the involvement of Nepal, Bhutan, and China
And
substantially,
China,
because
and
China
absolutely.
substantially. So we will have to be very, very cognizant of this. And water is becoming increasingly less because of the climate change, and population is rising. So per capita water availability is reducing. Also in Bangladesh, especially, and in even in India, certain portions in the eastern India, because of excessive exploitation of groundwater, the ground chemistry is such, the soil chemistry is such that groundwater is becoming contaminated. as I said, that about 83 to 84% of Bangladesh water is contaminated groundwater. If that be the case, they need water. And unless we try to find solutions to it, yes, it is going to escalate into a major, major conflict. Earlier, also, when Faraka was made, there was a very difficult situation between India and Bangladesh. It was the sagacity of India, when generosity, when we gave the water to Bangladesh. So next year it will be so, but this time probably India will not be as generous as it was in
Generous.
'96. Hmm.
Correct.
So they will have to be a little more, say, practical about it.
Next question to Jan Nair. How does it help America to convert Northeast into a Christian community? Is this their way of eradicating Hinduism?
No, not really. When I say Americans, it is not America as a state which is doing this. Uh, it is the Christian fraternity, it is the church who's actually involved in all of this. Uh, I drew attention way back to the 19th century, late 19th century, when it all started, and it has never stopped thereafter. While in this podcast we only spoke of Mizoram, this problem is a lot relevant in Arunachal Pradesh, which doesn't border any of these regions. Uh, so Arunachal Pradesh, if you see the demographic change that has happened, it's immense over the last 20 to 30 years. Given that the density of population of Arunachal Pradesh is just 13 people per square kilometer, the lowest in the country. But yet, this transformation is happening. And again, I would like to reiterate, it's not a state-sponsored thing. It is just the evangelical thing that is at play over here.
Next question to Jan Chaturvedi. If democracy is not working, let army take over the state. I think Indian army can rule the state better. What do you
No,
say?
definitely not. No, no, big, big, big no. I mean, one institution which is secular, which is apolitical, don't spoil it. We have
But
examples of
talking of India
Banaras.
or
Sorry.
which country? Which country is he talking of? India or Bangladesh? Army to take over.
No, no. He's talking of India, basically the border regions.
Okay, okay.
No, I think I mean, my firm view is no. Army has to do. They have got their task, and I think which is a very clear cut task, and we will continue doing that. Let political system take care of the country.
Yeah. Next question to Jan Nair. North of Myanmar is Yunnan, which is Tibetan territory, not China. So, is the game to contain China or to keep Bharat's growth in check? Your views.
North
This
of
is a
Myanmar.
question. This is a question which has been bugging me also. I think we can quickly have your comments on this.
Uh, I'll just read out the question again for me to understand myself. North of Myanmar is
Is
Yunnan.
Yunnan, which is the Tibetan
It's
territory.
actually northeast,
Yeah.
which is Tibetan territory. It is not Tibetan territory, not China. What you're talking of north of Arunachal Pradesh is Tibet. Maybe that is what you want to frame your question as. The latter part. So, is the game to contain China or to keep Bharat's growth in check? This, if Akash Krishnan is the person who's made this question, it needs to be reframed. I need to understand the context that he's trying to put. Is it Tibet that he's talking of, or is he talking of Yunnan, which is not Tibet at all?
Essentially, he's talking of, is it to contain China or is it to keep Bharat's growth in check? Basically, leave the Tibetan and the Chinese territory out of it.
Yunnan was part
Essentially,
of
what it is, essentially, when we are talking about
Tibet.
the big power game which we spoke about, is it to contain China? He's talking about the Americans. Are they there to contain China, or are they there to stunt the growth of
the, the,
India?
the the larger aim is surely to stop the growth of China, and in the process, if the Indian growth story also gets arrested, so fine. They don't. They, any. I mean, what to speak of US? Any country will not want to have more than one competitor. It already has China. It can't afford to have another one in this region to give it greater competition.
Next question, I'll not ask anyone to answer, just a comment, and it can be taken for what it is. appoint four uh, persons to take care of security, like Mr. Ajit Doval in the four corners of the country for taking care of the security. I leave it to you, Pawan. It's your judgment. This question is for Jan Chaturvedi. When they are playing games, who told you to be good? It's funny. So,
No,
uh,
time
your
time
comments.
has come. My sense is that being good and being generous and all are all passe. India no longer plays that kind of a game any longer. You see any of the examples, be it Sindoor, how we responded, be it how we are responding to Nepal, how we are responding to anyone. So being good is, I mean, it should be in your national interest rather than being good or generous or anything.
Yeah. Next question to you, Jan Chaturvedi. Learned generals, we are struggling with BD despite being a good neighbor and supporting them in many ways. What stops Myanmar Rakhine state from being taken over by USA to stop us from growing? I mean, this question has already been answered partially by you. If you want to add anything further, you can do. Otherwise, we'll go to the next one.
Actually, nothing much can be said, but the fact is that American interest is that China is now confirmed their competitors, and that is why India has got the potential to be a competitor in future. So they would like to check the growth of both. Simple. And China's
Okay.
interest is if Russia goes down, then they become the target of America. So they will like Ukraine want to go on and Russia to continue. So this is a
Okay.
very
I think this is the answer is very clear. If you are rising, if your neighbor is, it's always there. It's a human nature. If someone is, running ahead of you, you try to push him back.
catch.
India, as of now, has arrived at the national international stage. We are the third, going to be the third largest economy, and it is very simple. Germany and India, the gap is very limited, right? Germany is growing at 1 to 2%. India
Not
is
to do
growing at 6. Yeah,
0.1%.
India is growing at 6.5%. It will not take you more than 2 years to just cross them over. So we are the third largest economy. It's a simple mathematics. There will be people who will be trying to pull you back. They don't want another China to come on their head. The West has already been so badly taken over by the East. So therefore, India will face its headwinds, and let's live with it and let's find solutions for that. I think next question, and I probably will take this as the last question. We have reached our 1 hour limit. Why is it then? Uh, why is it that when Muslim minorities anywhere across the world, bar China, are harassed or oppressed, the whole world has problem. But when oppressors are Islamic, everyone turns blind eye. Yeah, this is a very old perception and a question. Jan Nair, you like to add?
This is, I think, a perception, but in large parts of the world, while I mean, again, go with that famous adage that all Muslims are not terrorists, but again, quite a few of them who have been brought to justice have been found to be Muslims. And surely all the Muslims are not blameworthy for that. There are certain elements within them who want a kind of a rule where oppression and violence should be the norm, which is, again, I repeat, not true for everyone. Let's look closer. Bangladesh. What you now see in the newspapers is not what everyone in Bangladesh wants. There are quite a few people who want peace, and Yunus himself is facing great headwinds. Uh, for him, the agenda is different, but many of them want to get back to the growth story of Bangladesh. It was one of the best performing countries in South Asia. So again, this statement is quite a wide statement, may not necessarily be true.
Yeah, so actually there are many more questions. The chat box is full. I am constrained by time, so I will select one question of whom I have not asked earlier in the past. He has come first time, and this is, I think, this is Ritik Kothari. Yes. Uh, if US really wants to keep a watch on China and counter it, why did it not loop us into this? We, being bosses of this area, could have helped. US actively tries to undermine us with such moves. Jan Chaturvedi, sir, you can give the
Uh,
comments.
my sense is that Americans are not looking at India as a as a permanent ally, and the national interest, they're looking for their national interest, and so therefore when it's because they are seeing a longer perspective where India may become a competitor, so therefore uh, they are not involving us, and I think it's good. We our strategic autonomy we should maintain, and we must try to find our own reason to be relevant in this area. That is what my sense is.
Yeah, we will now like to close. There are, like I said, I am trying to search through the window for anything which may be a little different. Yes, there is one question which is slightly, this is the counter of that, the question which we just asked, and this I'll ask General Nair to take on. What exactly is our policy? We should have reached out to the US rather than taking aggressive and non-negotiable stance on Bangladesh. Now India has limited scope, reliability vis-a-vis US West. This has been going on in the strategic circles and international relations, the diplomatic circles. Probably in the beginning we went a little lorry. Your comments.
Look, in terms of if I have to answer this in one line as to what exactly is our policy, uh, we have never believed in alignments which have a security dimension directly to it. And it is actually the right decision we took. And a clear cut example is there in front of you of Sindoor. We did it all alone. And only yesterday, probably the deputy chief made a statement. It was one border where we had three adversaries, against us. So it is always your national interests. And even if we had done what you're suggesting, there was no assurance that the US would have helped us in any way, because on their radar, this is hardly relevant for them. Bangladesh, if at all, is of relevance, is to counter China, and in the process, if India's rise also get arrested, so fine, why not? That is how they look at it. So anything that we need to do here, we'll have to do it ourselves and not depend on anyone.
We
Very
have
well
to
said.
do ourselves, and I want to close with a military man's, at least in the name it suggests, future DG artillery, and this will be answered by General Chaturvedi. He can add to the previous question and also take on this question. So, do you see a separatist or insurgent terror movement taking place in West Bengal over the next 2 decades? Rampant influx of radical illegal aliens and their facilitation by West Bengal CM is a national security threat. It's a slightly political overtone question. You may choose to answer, you may not choose to answer. Over to you, sir, if you wanted to add some
No,
points.
I definitely would like to answer it, but I do not see situation the way he sees it. Yes, India, there had been threats of this kind from very, very long time. And the fact is that West Bengal had always been our very, very important state. And I don't think any anti-national, say, kind of a movement taking place in West Bengal. So therefore, this question is, and his imputation towards West Bengal chief minister is avoidable. I don't think she has her own
Yeah,
reasons, but definitely not a
yeah.
security threat.
Yeah, future DG artillery, I would like to say that since we are discussing a security situation, we will avoid internal references. Those are well known to people, and those need to be addressed. That is what we can add to this. And with this, thank you very much. And I would end by this quote from one of our audience. He says, "Thank you so much, General. Excellent discussion, and it is always a learning." And so is my comment on this particular discussion. Thank you very much, sir, and Jai Hind. See you next time soon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Jai.